Hey, good morning. I'm Dr. Steve Stites, Chief Medical Officer here at the University of Kansas Health System. Welcome back to Open Mics with Dr. Stites on our monthly edition of Show Me the Sign. Okay, these are my favorite episodes. I can't wait to have this conversation. Have you ever felt butterflies in your stomach? And when I was in track in high school, I could not hardly run. I was so nervous. Or maybe you've seen someone who gets so nervous that they actually throw up, and I used to do that. These are two examples of the connection between your gut and your brain, also known as the gut-brain axis. And today, we're going to talk to some experts. We're going to explore the so-called second brain in your gut. Spoiler alert, there's a lot we still have to learn. In fact, you could say it's the final frontier. These are the voyages of, okay, I won't go there. It's a hot area of research, though, but the gut-brain axis is already showing it can be a target for therapy, and in a few minutes, we'll meet someone whose doctor prescribed an antidepressant to address her GI issues, and we'll hear how understanding your mental health might help your digestive health as well. I am joined by two expert gastroenterologists, Drs. Molly Jackson, welcome back to the program.
Thank you for having me.
And Dr. Tuba Esfandiyari.
Thanks for having me.
Was that close?
Very close.
Okay, good. I rehearsed that a few times. Maybe I get that right. Also, Lindsay Parker, who is both referred to Dr. Jackson and a therapist for her persistent GI symptoms. She's going to tell her story in just a moment. Okay, so we use the nickname second brain, but it's officially speaking, we're talking about the enteric nervous system. Enteric is your gut, nervous being part of your nervous system, and separate from your central nervous system is your brain and spinal cord. But Dr. Jackson, what are the main functions of this enteric nervous system, or like we like to be cool and call it the second brain?
Yeah, well, the second brain, our gut, of course, has a lot of responsibility. You know, it monitors and aids in the motility, both how quickly, how slowly the GI tract works, absorption, digestion, but it also controls secretion of fluids, and interestingly plays an interesting role in endocrine hormone production and also in our immune response. So it's a busy organ, is our second gut. Brain.
It's pretty amazing. I've been reading a little bit about this for a few years, and I was like, holy cow. So Dr. Esfandiyari, I said it right that time.
That's very correct.
Okay. You brought a slide showing us what this second brain looks like under a microscope. Starting the top left, it looks a little like a net or a mesh. Tell me what we're looking at.
The left side of the image shows the organization of enteric nervous system. Basically, it's a section of the bowel that has been stripped from the superficial layer and then stained to highlight the nerves and the fibers associated with the nerves. As you can see, the enteric nervous system starts from the mouth to the rectum and goes along all the length of the bowel.
So that's like a piece of gut that we're laying in.
Exactly.
You know, that's all the nervous system that's down there, or the second brain, huh?
Exactly. There's 10 million of nerve cells, and on the right side of the image, it shows how enteric nervous system is sandwiched between different layers of the bowel. There's one part called submucosa plexus, which is basically underneath of those finger-like projections of the epithelium. Epithelium is the surface, and submucosa means that underneath of the surface. And that is in connect with the epithelial cells, and epithelial cells are in connect with the outside world inside the lumen of the bowel. They are in contact with the nutrients, with toxins, bacteria, mechanical stimulus. Therefore, that's how the outside world talks to the enteric nervous system. And then the other parts of the enteric nervous system, which is called myenteric plexus, is sandwiched between two layers of the two small smooth and circumferential muscle layer of the bowel. And as you can imagine, it's in contact with the muscle layer, and that is in charge of activity and motility of the digestive system, contraction. It's called second brain also for there are 10 millions of nerve cells in this network of the myenteric and submucosal plexus. And if you imagine, rather than these nerves to occupy a section of the brain, they are command centers located in the ball of the small bowel and the colon and the stomach and the whole GI tract, so that they're going to be close to the action center and be involved to minute-to-minute interaction with the outside world and our digestive system. rather than bombarding the nerve cells in the brain with unnecessary information. And that's how the enteric nervous system is.
Okay, let me just say, that's pretty cool to think that there's a nervous system running through my gut that's different than the one in my brain. And it's interacting with things like absorption and secretion, about stuff in our gut. So it's kind of directing its own health, if you will, right? And yet, how do our thoughts and emotion and what's going on in our head end up affecting what's going on in our gut, or even vice versa?
Stress is a major contributor to the brain-gut axis disorder. Stress affects the enteric nervous system the same way that it affects our central nervous system. When you started, you mentioned about butterfly, and that's that sensation of a little bit of discomfort in your stomach, or even nauseous, or even have urgency to have bowel movement, and that is acceptable to everybody when you have this butterfly feeling when you are stage fright like me right now, or
you have stage fright right now.
I did.
You're doing a great job. Well, don't be frightened.
A stage fright, or when you go for a job interview. Therefore, these are all acceptable if you feel a little bit nauseous, if you have run to the bathroom, you have urgency. But that's how stress affects us, and for us, it's this brain-gut disorder. The patients who have brain-gut disorder, they have different kinds of stress and anxiety, and it is called visceral anxiety. And that's when the GI symptoms itself is a source of stress for them. When we are in the clinic, we see that we hear from the patient that I won't be able to leave the house until I had all my bowel movements in the morning, or wherever I go, I first look at for the bathroom, and that's the GI symptoms of the gas, the distension, the discomfort that make them so much vigilant and hyperreactive that affects their quality of life. That's how they look at or function as outside. It affects them. Therefore, this is called of visceral anxiety. And also our digestive system gets information from the brain, and that's the cornerstone of behavioral therapy, that how to calm down brain with the different methods that they use in behavioral therapy to cope with these GI symptoms.
So if you're already having a lot of anxiety, likelihood is that's going to be manifested in your gut. And if you have a little underlying gut disease on top of that, man, that's got to be a really difficult combination.
It would affect each other, and it might not affect each other, because sometimes, patients, we hear from them and misinterpret that, my doctor thinks everything is in my brain and they gave me antidepressant, but I'm not depressed. The anxiety that we have in our daily activity is different from anxiety that we have in our gut. The same way that sensation in gut is different from sensation from the skin. Therefore, we call it nociceptors, or pain sensation. We can have the sensation when I touch my skin, you have 2-point sensation. With the gut, you don't have that sensation. You have the pain in the lower abdomen, upper abdomen. You can have it appendicitis, the same kind of pain. You can have, gallbladder disease. You can have the same pain. Therefore, people can have anxious and have calm stomach, or they can have anxious stomach but be calm on outside world. Some patients tell me that but I have very high pain sensitivity. Pain sensitivity in the periphery is different from pain sensitivity in the digestive system. And I give you the example that in the clinical studies, they had studied the pain sensation in patients who have brain-gut disorder, and our digestive system is sensitive to distension. Therefore, if I put a balloon in the stomach or the rectum and distend it and do functional MRI at the same time to check the pain area of the brain lighting up, distension of a stomach or rectum causes the pain area to light up in the MRI. The difference between people who have IBS versus normal population is the amount of distension that fires up those pain nerve endings that sends the message to the brain. Therefore, with the small amount of distension, which could be passing gas, normal amount of gas through the digestive system, or normal bowel movement or defecation or contraction, it lights up the pain area in the brain.
It's an amazing story. So let's talk with Lindsay. Lindsay Parker.
Hi.
Welcome to our program. Thank you for being here. I understand you've had what you call a nervous stomach your entire life, as long as you can remember. And it got even worse around the start of the pandemic. Can you give us an example of what kind of GI issues you lived with during that time and how that impacted your daily life?
So since I was little, anytime I had a stressor, I would always have like the feeling you had said about when you were doing track and field,
Yeah, that's terrible.
where, I mean, it was almost like a trick I could do. It'd be like, oh, did Lindsay throw up? You know, is Lindsay in the bathroom again? And so it always felt like I had no control of it. It was just something that would happen, and always in, you know, the least amount that you wanted it to happen. You have this big thing going on, and now I feel like I'm gonna throw up. It's not good, or I did, or I'd start throwing up and I couldn't stop. So it was always just this mysterious thing that I had, didn't know why, and it would ebb and flow throughout my childhood. So my parents are abusive alcoholics, and I think that a lot of my GI issues manifested from trying to keep a lid on that. Had a lot of shame throughout my childhood, didn't want anybody to know, and so I thought if everything looked good on the outside, then I could hold all of this stuff together. And that was basically how I went through life. I thought I was super tough, very strong. Other people needed more help than me, but I made it through. You know, I'm married, I just had a kid, and then everything I did before I thought I could still do, even ebbing and flowing through GI symptoms. And now it makes so much more sense that the connection, I can see that at my worst with my GI symptoms that felt uncontrollable, it was my body's way of telling me you are not dealing with what's going on in your head, and so we have decided to make you physically ill. And it took, gosh, probably from the start of lockdown, trying to juggle teaching online, my husband working at home, having a newborn, from the onset of those symptoms being debilitating to where my life was very hard to eat. And then all of the things that I did to get stress relief, like working out, going for a run, to get out of those ruminations in my head, they no longer worked. It was like because I had no prediction of the plan ahead, and that was basically how I got through my childhood. If I can plan and I can keep people's behavior under control, then I can handle all of these outside factors. But I mean, life is crazy, it's chaotic, you can't control the behavior of others. And yeah, that was something I had learned, unfortunately, the hard way. When you don't listen to your body has a way of making you listen.
Isn't that interesting? Now, you were seeing your primary care physician, trying some different diets, and eventually, I think you were referred to gastroenterologist Dr. Molly Jackson, and then you were referred to behavioral health. Tell us about how all that came together and how did it work?
So at first, during lockdown, my primary care physician, it was just believed that I had some viruses that just were kind of nasty and not letting up and kind of had some long tails on them. And then it started happening more frequently, like instead of maybe a few days a month, it was a few days a week. And then those weeks turned into you know, two weeks out of the month, I was extremely ill, very hard for me to take care of my child. My husband was very worried about me, but the whole time I kept thinking, I can do this, I'll just keep going. And it was almost like having my own child brought back my childhood and things that I had never really dealt with. And I'd be in the middle of a run or a workout, and I'd just have these vivid memories and would basically be so ill I wouldn't be able to finish whatever the task was I was doing. And my primary care physician, I probably could still go through my MyChart and look at messages at like 2:45 a.m. sending it to him of basically, I don't know what to do, you know, I'm so sick, I can't sleep, I can't eat. And I mean, I tried everything from diets, different tests, and it was about a year, actually a few months into that year, to where he said, have you thought about behavioral health? And this was over the phone because it was during COVID, and he had been sharing some test results, and I at first was, because I really struggle with vulnerability and showing kind of like what's underneath like my outside projection to the world. And when he said behavioral health, I thought, oh my gosh, this complete stranger thinks that
I'm crazy.
I'm crazy.
Yeah.
And I've always been like, people have always told me, you're so strong, you can handle all this stuff, you know. At work, I've been trying to find a Lindsay Parker to replace me forever, but once you become that person, you are that person, right? Because you can handle it. And from the outside, that's what I wanted to project, but on the inside, I was crumbling.
You were sick.
I was so sick,
Yeah.
so sick.
So talking with the counselor helped you get some of those dots connected. How did therapy help, and what did you learn from Dr. Jackson as part of this whole story?
So the first kind of my first call with behavioral health, because I said, once I got over the initial shock, and quite frankly, I was enraged that he had suggested that, and I'd said to my husband, basically, how dare he? You know, he doesn't know
doctors. He
anything about me.
How can he possibly say this? Oh my God, he knew everything about me.
Yeah, and then I kind of thought, you know, you're reaching out to him in the middle of the night. You have nothing to lose. Why not, you know, talk to somebody? And it was like, I remember when I got the call, I was on the way to Costco, actually. And I pulled over and I probably talked for an hour where they asked these open-ended questions. And I remember being drenched in sweat and like shaking. It felt so good to say that stuff out loud of what was in me. And it was immediately like, I think that I need this. And I've tried everything else. I so wanted it to be something that, you know, was happening to my body instead of something that my body was doing to itself because of things I had chose to ignore.
So now, Dr. Jackson did something. She put you on some medication too, is that right? Mm-hmm. Did that help? Talk to us a little bit about that.
Yeah, this was another time where I came home and I had, you know, talked to so many different doctors, so many different people that had done tests, and I kind of felt, I was feeling a little crazy at that point of trying to figure out why all of this was happening. And when I had talked to you, it felt like immediately you kind of knew what was going on. And it was just this, I remember going back home after that first appointment and telling my husband, I think we may know what all of this stuff is. And it was like, after that, I knew things were going to get better, and it meant a lot. And it was like just taking this huge, deep breath of, I think I can start my life again, and this time I won't have all of this shame, and I'll have tools to understand that, like, this is how you listen to your body.
Hope is a powerful thing.
It is. It really is.
It's a big part of medicine. So Dr. Jackson, talk to us a little bit about this, and what did you think?
Yeah, I mean, you know, we see this gut-brain axis not infrequently anymore, and patients present in a variety of ways. You know, Lindsay is a little bit more of the vomiting, but people can have abdominal pain, nausea, changes in their bowel habits, diarrhea, constipation, or flipping back and forth. But all of that is this, you know, constant signals. You know, our brain and our gut are besties, if you will, and they're always chatting, always communicating, sending these messages back and forth. So, you know, some of these medicines we now prescribe, historically, they are antidepressants, but we in GI use them as neuromodulators. You know, like aspirin, pain medicine. Now, gosh, aspirin's used for heart disease and strokes and even cancer prevention. The same thing, the longer we've known about these medicines, we're seeing more benefits. And so while it is an antidepressant, we are using them to kind of help control those messages and that chit-chat back and forth between the gut and the brain.
Dr. Sundar, the tuba. I'm sorry. Okay, now, in Lindsay's case, mental health was impacting the gut, but is this a two-way street? Can your gut impact your mental health and vice versa and back and forth?
Absolutely, you are on point, and Dr. Jackson has mentioned that, you know, they're besties. Communication is bidirectional, and actually, let me talk about Pavlov experiment. In 1904, he won the physiology Nobel Prize for showing the interaction between gut and the brain, and how the brain can control gut. And in the famous conditioning experiment, the ringing bell associated with presenting food to the dog initiated the dog hearing the bell muscle as a sign that food is coming, and they started salivation. In our own human world, it's translated to seeing a picture of food when we're hungry, or we're talking about food and pizza, or a juicy burger, and our mouth starts salivating. And at the same time, our digestive system, stomach starts secreting acid, and the pancreas starts secreting pancreatic juice and enzymes to prepare for the food. Therefore, Pavlov showed that this connection exists, but also it's learnable. And that's what, and I mentioned that, hot, light, distension of bowel can light up the brain, pain area of the brain. Therefore, they talk to each other, and they use the same neurotransmitters. The gut nervous system uses the same neurotransmitters, neurochemicals that the brain cells use to communicate. And that's no brainer that, the antidepressant we use for depression, it can also be used as a neuromodulator, as Dr. Jackson mentioned, that to control this. And most importantly, behavioral therapy is gaining control of your body, responding to your own body. We were just chit-chatting with Dr. Jackson before the session, and we said that migraine is more acceptable to general population. When you have headache, not that the patient every time goes to the doctor, what's the cause of my headache? They accept it, the same with arthritis, osteoarthritis. But for the GI, a lot of times I think this brain-gut interaction is not well known, and that's patient gets the agony that, I know that all my tests are normal, but I want to get to the bottom of this. What is the cause of my symptoms? And that is the agony causes more stress and anxiety. But while you accept it, and with behavioral therapy, you can have coping mechanisms. I'm not a psychotherapist, but they use coping mechanisms and stress control and listening to your body and how to manage the stress and the symptoms of your body rather than being hyper vigilant about it.
It's pretty amazing. And I know that when we don't have time right now to talk about the gut microbiome, so you all got to come back to talk about all the bacteria in the gut and all the difference that can make. All right, we're going to be here to answer your questions. Send them using the links on your screen with YouTube, Facebook, or email the Medical News Network. We're going to check in with Doc Hawk down in Olathe this morning. Doc Hawk. Hey, we're in the middle of a substantial wave of COVID-19 infections, and thankfully immunity is helping keep hospitalizations way, way down. Looking at the CDC wastewater graph, the right side shows that we are really trending up, much higher than we did last summer, but especially in the western region of the United States. So we're past last summer's peak, yet our hospitalizations are a lot lower, Hawkeye. Help us understand.
Yeah, I think you're exactly right. I think that is good news overall for everyone, for individuals, for our population as a whole. Hospitalization levels are lower in general compared to the pandemic, but also lower than we have seen in the past as well. So I think that is all good news, and that can be attributed to that immunity that people have, both individually but also as a population. Unfortunately, though, that wastewater graph that you just showed did show that levels are still rising. So that is unfortunate. We know that the disease is out there. The virus is still circulating. What I'm hoping, especially as we're getting into now getting closer to school and kids will be going back, teachers will be going back, all of that, that we will start to see a plateau and then a lowering of the overall wastewater. But of course, that means that a lowering of the overall disease when school starts. I think that is important so everyone can be well and healthy and going to school. The other thing we would say is that the most frequent variant that is identified right now, it's about 30% of cases, is the KP.3.1.1. This is related to the new updated vaccine strain, the KP.2. So we will look for that vaccine to come out hopefully maybe at the end of this month or early in September. I would still advise and recommend people to get that updated vaccine. It will be recommended for everyone 6 months of age. Again, hopefully keeping that reduced risk for severe disease and hospitalization down, especially for those at highest risk. But we know even healthy people can suffer illness and also long-term illness from COVID-19. And we know that the vaccine can help reduce that as well.
All right. Well, thank you, and I hope you're doing great work down in our Southwest Kansas City market. I know you are. Hey, let's head to Studio B with Alexis. It's awesome. Who has been watching for questions coming in. Alexis, I bet this is a pretty hot topic.
It surely is. We actually have a question for Lindsay. Lindsay, Jill wants to know, now that you've had a breakthrough between the pain in your gut, do you still have stomach troubles, and are you on less medication?
So I'm still on the same amount. I'm actually in the process of doing a taper on it just to see how that is. And I actually feel like I have such a strong understanding now between my mind and my body. I made a promise to my husband and my kiddo that I would never, ever let myself get to that point ever again to where I could not function. And I feel I have a lot of coping mechanisms through therapy, and what felt uncontrollable and impossible, now I have like telltale signs where I'm like, okay, this is a stressor, but I've been here. I know what I can do. And I think almost little to none since I visited Dr. Jackson, and since I view it like maintenance on a car. I need to do maintenance on my brain so that my body doesn't fall apart. And when I don't do maintenance on my brain, my body falls apart. So
That's
what a healthy way to look at
it. Taking care of yourself does make a difference. Yeah. Sorry, go ahead, Alexis.
Marie has a question. Marie writes, my therapist was recently talking to me about something called the GAPS diet for depression. What exactly is the GAPS diet, and do you believe that could help people?
Yeah, so I'll take this one. So the GAPS diet is the gut and psychology syndrome diet.
Okay.
And the theory behind it is that there are leaky guts. And this too is a theory that in the model that Dr. Esfandiari was talking about later, he saw those little finger projections. Those are a little bit more open, allowing toxins or bacteria or things that we don't want to get through the GI tract to get in there, and ultimately then leading to some type of brain disorder. The data honestly is lacking to truly understand what all of this means. GAPS diet really hasn't become mainstay or standard of practice at all within GI. I'm not certain what our psychiatry and psychology colleagues are doing and how often they are prescribing this. Of note, I'm not an expert with the GAPS diet by any means, but it's a really restrictive diet. It cuts out a lot of foods, even nutritional healthy foods, and it's a long time that you're on it, 1.5 to 2 years before you even begin introducing. So in the adult population, I just find that really difficult to maintain.
So low FODMAP diet, is that like I don't know, what do you have to cut out in the GAPS diet? How does that compare to low FODMAP?
So again, GAPS diet is very restrictive. It is almost everything except processed foods, and then there are some supplements that they do add into that. The low FODMAP diet are some of these higher gassy type foods that we eat. There are definitely limitations with dairy and gluten there too, but it's not quite as restrictive. And the time frame being on the low FODMAP isn't as extensive. You know, you eliminate, but then really within a couple months you're adding things back in to try to find your triggers. Mediterranean diet is another diet that I think is often now discussed within the GI realm too, is a healthy diet that has shown benefit across a lot of different GI entities.
Hey, listen, my gut was so smart. When I did the low FODMAP gluten-free thing for some IBS, and I started feeling better, I was like, I don't even believe in this low FODMAP. So I just tried again, and all the symptoms came back. And so I was like, okay, well, I'll try. And it works. I don't believe it. I tried to go back. Every time I go off of it, I felt bad. Every time I go back on it, I felt much better. And then I did the additive stuff, got back on the things, and then I could figure out what was bad and what was good. So garlic and onions are bad. Gluten's bad. Cherries are good.
Triggers.
You get it all back. So, hey, this has been a great discussion this morning, and I am really grateful for our guests for being here. I'd like to hear some final thoughts before we go. So, Dr. Tuba, how about you?
I just want to thank for inviting me. This is really very interesting. I'm glad that this discussion has been brought up, and because there is a lot we don't know, and there is a lot of misconception from our part and our patients' part. As I said, among other diseases, a migraine is well accepted that you have the symptoms, but you don't need to look for answers rather than finding the it, what is the it cause. I think these discussions bring more education and knowledge to community, and I'm thankful for that.
Yeah, well, thank you. And do you feel less nervous now?
I do.
Okay. Is your gut happier?
My gut is happy now.
Awesome. All right. Lindsay, thank you for being on our program. You're awesome, and your story was so darn compelling. Touch us about your final thoughts.
I just obviously really nervous. Took a lot of vulnerability to share this, but I feel like if I can help one person, then it's totally worth it, because I was so miserable, and learning the power that you actually have with your body and your mind has been the biggest takeaway of this journey, is that I had no idea how interconnected they were, and now I know. It's not perfect, but it takes work to get it right, but it is super worth it to figure out what is happening inside of you. Really is.
Yeah, that's awesome. Congratulations on feeling better.
Thank you.
That is the best.
Yes.
The power of hope and science. We'll talk more about that in a moment. All right, Dr. Jackson.
Yeah, I think I would say, look, if you're seeking help, hopefully you will be open-minded to a multidisciplinary approach that may include not only medications that we can offer, but also behavioral health, nutrition guidance, or other lifestyle modifications and recommendations.
Yeah, it does all work together, right?
Yeah, it does.
All right, Dr. Hawker, are you out there? He's already got on the consults. All right, well, here's my final thought for today. First of all, thanks to all of our guests. I talk a lot on this program about faith, hope, and science. And I think that sometimes, especially when you feel badly, it's hard to keep that faith and faith in your own self and your own body. But then when you find that hope, it feels like a miracle. And it's the power of science combined with the power of hope can really help deliver on the power of our own health. So what a great program. You guys got to come back. I think we need to talk about this some more. This has been fantastic. Thanks again to all of our guests. Thanks to our audience. Remember, faith, hope, and science. We'll be back here to talk about that combination next week.
Join us tonight at Kauffman Stadium for our next Royals Health Awareness Night. Tonight, we highlight cancers affecting women and the specialized treatments offering hope and even a cure. Stop by Gate A before the game to grab some free Royals swag, visit our photo booth, and enter for a chance to win a Royals gift card. We'll see you at the K.
Coming up Friday on the Morning Medical Update, her dad, her uncle, and then herself. When Lori Chavez learned they all three shared the same cancer diagnosis, she wondered what would it mean for her children. I'm Alexis Del Cid. On the next Morning Medical Update, we explore Lynch syndrome, where symptoms don't appear until the cancer develops. The importance of understanding your genes, plus the research that could prevent cancer spreading with a vaccine. Friday at 8 a.m.
Subscribe to our Morning Medical Update and Open Mics with Dr. Stites podcast. Now everywhere podcasts are available.